The Galactic Council chambers hummed with the usual mixture of translated languages, each species maintaining their own distinct communication methods. Admiral Zektar of the Hegemony Fleet adjusted his ceremonial armor as he watched the human delegation enter through the massive crystalline doors. Their representative, a woman named Captain Sarah Chen, walked with measured steps toward the central speaking platform. Zektar couldn't help but notice how small humans appeared compared to most council species. The Hegemony warriors stood nearly 3 meters tall, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming under the chamber's artificial lighting. The crystalline Vex towered even higher, their bodies refracting light into prismatic displays of authority. Even the slug-like Morathi possessed impressive bulk that commanded respect through sheer mass. Humans, by comparison, looked fragile. Their soft skin seemed inadequate protection, their modest height unimpressive, their simple clothing practical but unremarkable. When humanity had first petitioned for council membership 3 cycles ago, most species had viewed them as another minor civilization, seeking protection under the galactic umbrella. Honored council members, Captain Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation matrix. Humanity formally requests permission to contribute our newest vessel to the combined defense fleet. A ripple of amusement passed through several delegations. The Hegemony section chittered with barely contained laughter. Admiral Zektar leaned forward in his seat, curious despite his skepticism. Humanity's previous contributions had been adequate but unremarkable, decent escort vessels and capable support craft, nothing that would change the balance of power in known space. "What classification of vessel do you propose to add, Captain Chen?" inquired High Arbiter Velnash, the ancient Vex whose crystalline form had overseen council proceedings for over 2 centuries. "A battleship, Honored Arbiter. The UNS Defiance." The chamber fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting into various forms of laughter. The Hegemony delegation's chittering reached a crescendo, while the Morathi's deep rumbling chuckles vibrated through the floor. Even some of the more diplomatic species struggled to maintain their composure. Admiral Zektar stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the human delegation. "Honored Arbiter, with respect to our human colleagues, perhaps they misunderstand the classification system. A battleship requires certain specifications that their technology has not yet achieved." Captain Chen remained perfectly still, her expression unchanging. "Admiral Zektar, I believe our vessel meets all council requirements for battleship classification. Length exceeding 1 kilometer, primary armament capable of planetary bombardment, and defensive systems rated for fleet engagement. Length is meaningless without proper mass and firepower," Zektar replied dismissively. "The smallest Hegemony battleship masses 4 million tons and carries weapons that can crack continents. What does this Defiance bring to the combined fleet? I think it would be better to show rather than tell," Chen said calmly. "The Defiance is currently holding position at the system's edge, as per council protocols for unknown vessels. Perhaps a demonstration would satisfy your concerns." High Arbiter Velnash's crystalline features shifted in what passed for consideration among the Vex. "Admiral Zektar, would the Hegemony be willing to conduct an evaluation exercise, standard fleet maneuvers and weapons demonstrations?" Zektar's mandibles clicked with pleasure. "Of course, Honored Arbiter. My flagship, the Relentless Conquest, would be honored to assess humanity's battleship capabilities." The phrase carried undertones that the translation matrix struggled to convey, condescension mixed with amusement and a hint of predatory anticipation. Zektar commanded one of the Hegemony's most feared vessels, a massive dreadnought that had shattered rebellion fleets across 3 sectors. "Excellent," Chen replied without a trace of concern. "When would be convenient for Admiral Zektar?" Chen, when would be convenient for Admiral Zektar? Why delay? My fleet is conducting maneuvers in this very system. We could begin immediately after this session. Captain Chen nodded once. The Defiance will be ready. As the council session concluded with various administrative matters, Admiral Zektar found himself genuinely curious about what humanity considered a battleship. Their previous vessels had shown competent engineering within their technological limitations, but nothing that suggested they could produce anything approaching true capital ship capabilities. The relentless conquest represented the pinnacle of hegemony military engineering. Its 8-kilometer length housed weapons capable of sterilizing planets, shields that could withstand the fury of entire fleets, and armor forged from materials that existed only in the hearts of dying stars. Zektar's crew numbered in the tens of thousands, each a veteran warrior trained from hatching in the arts of space combat. What could humanity possibly field against such overwhelming superiority? The journey to the system's edge took several hours, giving Zektar time to review intelligence reports on human military capabilities. Their ground forces had proven surprisingly effective in several small conflicts, showing a disturbing tendency toward tactical innovation and stubborn resistance. Their space navy, however, remained quantifiably inferior to any major galactic power. "Admiral," his sensor officer reported, "we're detecting the human vessel. Display on main viewer." The image that appeared on the command bridge's central screen drew confused murmurs from the crew. The UNS Defiance looked wrong. It measured just over a kilometer in length, meeting the technical requirement for battleship classification. But its design defied conventional warship architecture, where hegemony vessels favored angular, aggressive lines that spoke of predatory efficiency. The Defiance appeared almost organic. Its hull curved and flowed in ways that suggested movement even while stationary. Most strikingly, it appeared to be almost entirely black, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. "Curious design," Zektar mused. "Energy readings? Minimal, Admiral. Either their power systems are extremely efficient, or the vessel is operating on standby." 2000. Weapons? Unknown. "We're detecting what might be weapon ports, but they don't match any known configuration. The entire ship is remarkably difficult to scan. Some kind of advanced stealth coating, perhaps." Zektar studied the human vessel with growing interest. "Communications. Open a channel to the Defiance." "Channel open, Admiral." "Human vessel Defiance. This is Admiral Zektar commanding the hegemony battleship Relentless Conquest. Are you prepared to begin the evaluation exercise?" A new voice responded, not Captain Chen but a male human with a crisp, professional tone. "Admiral Zektar. This is Captain James Morrison, commanding the UNS Defiance. We are ready to proceed at your convenience." "Very well, Captain Morrison. As the established fleet, we will set the exercise parameters. Standard fleet engagement simulation. Weapons set to training levels. Your vessel will approach our formation and demonstrate its combat capabilities." "Understood, Admiral. Beginning our approach now." On the tactical display, the small icon representing the Defiance began moving toward Zektar's fleet. The hegemony formation consisted of the Relentless Conquest at center, flanked by 4 heavy cruisers and 8 destroyers, a force capable of conquering most independent systems. "Admiral," the sensor officer called out, "something's wrong with our readings." "Explain." "The human ship. We lost it, sir. One moment it was approaching at standard velocity. The next it simply vanished from sensors." Zektar's mandibles clicked irritably. "Impossible. Nothing that large disappears from military-grade sensors. Recalibrate and scan again." "Sir, already tried. It's like the ship was never there." Before Zektar could respond, proximity alarms screamed across the bridge. The main viewer automatically switched to threat assessment mode, showing nothing. Empty space where logic demanded the human battleship should be. "Ghost contact bearing 3 to 7 Mark 15, the sensor officer shouted. "No, wait, contact is gone. Now showing ghost bearing 9 to 2 Mark 8. "What is happening?" Zektar demanded. His answer came in the form of the most impossible thing he had ever witnessed. The space directly in front of the Relentless Conquest seemed to ripple like water, and suddenly the Defiance materialized less than 50 kilometers away, point-blank range in space combat terms. But that wasn't the impossible part. The impossible part was that the human ship hung motionless between the Relentless Conquest and its escort vessels, somehow having penetrated their entire formation without triggering a single sensor or weapon system. "How?" Zektar began. "Admiral Zektar, Captain Morrison's voice cut across the communications channel with unsettling calm. "We're in position to begin the exercise. Shall we demonstrate our defensive capabilities first?" "Your defensive," Zektar stopped mid-sentence as his tactical display exploded with new information. Every weapon system on every ship in his fleet had automatically locked onto the Defiance, following standard protocols for enemy vessels that had achieved advantageous positioning. "Sir," his weapons officer called out. "All batteries locked and ready to fire." "Wait," Zektar ordered. This was still an exercise, despite the humans' disturbing demonstration of stealth technology. "Defiance, you have achieved an impressive tactical position. However, our weapons are now locked onto your vessel. In actual combat, you would be destroyed before you could return fire." Captain Morrison's response chilled Zektar's blood. "Admiral, you might want to check your weapon systems again." The weapons officer's report came in a strangled whisper. "Sir, our weapons are offline. All of them. Every ship in the fleet is showing total weapons failure. Impossible. Run a full diagnostic." "Already running, Admiral. All systems show green, but nothing will fire. It's like the weapons simply refuse to acknowledge targeting commands." Zektar stared at the seemingly innocent human vessel floating in the midst of his fleet. "Captain Morrison, what have you done to our systems?" "Nothing irreversible, Admiral. We've simply demonstrated one of our defensive capabilities. Your weapons will return to normal function as soon as the exercise concludes." How is this possible?" "Trade secret, Admiral." "Would you like us to demonstrate our offensive capabilities now?" Every instinct Zektar possessed screamed that he was in mortal danger. His flagship, his entire fleet, hung helpless before a vessel that had somehow rendered them completely defenseless. But this was an exercise. A demonstration for the Council. The humans couldn't actually attack hegemony vessels, could they? "Very well," he managed. "Show us your weapons." The Defiance didn't move. It didn't rotate to bring weapons to bear, didn't power up obvious gun batteries, didn't launch missiles. Instead, space around the human vessel began to change. Zektar had seen many weapons in his long career. Plasma cannons that could melt armor, particle beams that could slice through hulls, nuclear missiles that could vaporize smaller ships. He had never seen anything like what the Defiance was doing. Reality itself seemed to bend around the human battleship. Stars visible through the viewports began to shift and twist, as if space was becoming fluid. The familiar background of distant galaxies warped into impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. "Gravitational distortion detected," the science officer reported. "Massive spatial anomaly forming around the human vessel." The warping effect spread outward from the Defiance like ripples in a pond. But these ripples bent space-time itself. As the distortion reached the nearest hegemony destroyer, something unprecedented happened. The destroyer simply folded. Not like metal bending under stress, but like reality itself was being origami-ed into new configurations. The ship remained structurally intact, its crew presumably unharmed. But it now existed in a geometric impossibility that violated every known law of physics. "Medical emergency on the stalwart blade," communications reported. "Crew reports severe disorientation but no injuries. They're requesting immediate assistance understanding their current situation." "We devil." Zektar couldn't blame them. Watching the destroyer exist simultaneously in normal space and some twisted dimensional pocket was giving him a headache that no amount of pain suppressors could touch. "The gravitational effects are intensifying," the science officer called out. "If this continues, the distortion could affect our own structural integrity." "Captain Morrison," Zektar found his voice, though it cracked with strain. "Please cease your demonstration. We acknowledge your vessel's unique capabilities." The response was immediate. The warping effect stopped expanding and began to contract back toward the Defiance. Within moments, the destroyer returned to normal space, its crew undoubtedly grateful to exist in standard three-dimensional reality again. "Demonstration complete, Admiral," Morrison said pleasantly. "I trust this satisfies the Council's evaluation requirements?" Zektar stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he had just witnessed. The humans had demonstrated stealth technology that surpassed anything in the galaxy. Defensive systems that could disable an entire fleet without firing a shot, and weapons that apparently manipulated space-time itself as a tool of war. "Admiral," his science officer whispered, "I'm reading some very disturbing energy signatures from that ship. Whatever power source they're using, it's operating on principles I don't recognize." "Captain Morrison," Zektar said carefully, "what exactly powers your vessel?" There was a pause before the human captain responded. And when he did, his tone carried an undertone that made Zektar's exoskeleton prickle with unease. "Let's just say humanity has learned to harness some very creative energy sources. Admiral, we find it's best not to go into too much detail. Some knowledge is better appreciated at a distance." The implications hit Zektar like a plasma bolt to the thorax. Humanity hadn't just built an advanced battleship, they had developed technologies that bordered on the impossible, powered by forces that their own creators preferred not to discuss in detail. We should return to the council chambers," Zektar said, his voice carefully controlled, "to file our evaluation report." "Of course, Admiral. The Defiance will return to our assigned position at the system's edge. Thank you for your cooperation during the exercise." As the human battleship began to move away, it didn't engage conventional drives. Instead, space around it simply shifted, and the vessel was suddenly elsewhere, moving through what appeared to be shortcuts in reality itself. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly, "incoming transmission from Fleet Headquarters." "Not now, sir. It's marked as urgent. From High Command." Zektar accepted the transmission, expecting routine operational updates. Instead, he found himself facing Supreme Admiral Thekvar, the highest-ranking military officer in the hegemony. "Admiral Zektar." Thekvar's scarred mandibles clicked ominously. "We've been monitoring your exercise with the human vessel." "Sir, I was about to file a full report. That won't be necessary. I've seen everything I need to see." Thekvar leaned forward, his massive frame filling the communication screen. "Admiral, I want you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." "Yes, sir. Under no circumstances are you to take any action that could be construed as hostile toward that human vessel. Do not attempt to scan it more deeply. Do not approach it without explicit permission. And absolutely do not take any action that might provoke a genuine combat response." "Sir, surely one ship? No matter how advanced." "Admiral," Thekvar interrupted, "that one ship just demonstrated the ability to disable your entire fleet and manipulate space-time as a weapon. Our xenoarchaeology department has been analyzing the sensor readings. What you witnessed was technology that approaches what the ancients might have possessed." The reference to the ancients, the long-vanished civilization that had left mysterious ruins across the galaxy, sent ice through Zektar's circulatory system. Ancient technology was universally regarded as beyond current galactic understanding, artifacts from a species that had transcended normal physical limitations before mysteriously disappearing eons ago. "You're suggesting the humans have ancient technology? I'm suggesting the humans have developed something that produces similar results, which may be even more disturbing. The ancients left ruins. The humans are still here, still building, still advancing." Thekvar's image leaned back slightly. "There's something else, Admiral. Our intelligence network has picked up some interesting information about human military development. They've been building more ships like the Defiance. We don't know how many, but preliminary estimates suggest they have at least a dozen vessels of similar capability. Possibly more." The number hit Zektar like a meteor impact. One ship with such capabilities was concerning. A dozen could reshape the galactic balance of power overnight. "What are our orders, sir?" "Return to base immediately and file a complete technical report." "And Admiral, when you address the Council, I strongly recommend supporting humanity's membership application and their fleet contribution. The hegemony has no interest in making enemies of a species that can fold space-time into origami." The transmission ended, leaving Zektar alone with his thoughts, and the increasingly uncomfortable realization that everything he thought he knew about galactic power structures had just become obsolete. As his fleet began the journey back to the council chambers, Admiral Zektar found himself staring at the star charts with new eyes. Humanity had been dismissed as a minor species, technological inferiors seeking the protection of more advanced civilizations. Instead, they had quietly developed capabilities that made them potentially the most dangerous force in known space. The truly unsettling part wasn't what the humans had revealed about their technology. It was what they hadn't revealed. Captain Morrison's casual reference to creative energy sources and knowledge, better appreciated at a distance, suggested that the Defiance's demonstration had been merely a glimpse of humanity's true capabilities. What other secrets were the humans keeping? What other creative technologies had they developed in the quiet years since first contact? And most disturbing of all, what exactly were they preparing for that required such devastating defensive and offensive capabilities? As the hegemony fleet jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Zektar made a mental note to review every intelligence report about human activities in the outer systems. Something told him that today's demonstration was not just about joining the Council fleet. It was about establishing that humanity was no longer the prey species that other civilizations had assumed them to be. They had become something far more dangerous, an unknown quantity with unknowable capabilities. And they were just getting started. They laughed at humanity's battleship moments. Later, their fleet was gone. 3 days after the demonstration that had left Admiral Zektar's fleet temporarily folded through impossible dimensions, the galactic intelligence community was in chaos. Every major species had deployed their most sophisticated monitoring equipment to study the human vessel that had redefined the meaning of military capability. Dr. Silith Morvain, of the Altarian Science Consortium, adjusted her bioluminescent tendrils as she reviewed the flood of data streaming across her laboratory screens. The Altarians had built their reputation on understanding the impossible their species had evolved in the crushing depths of oceanic worlds, where conventional physics bent under extreme pressure. If anyone could comprehend what humanity had demonstrated, it should have been her team. Instead, she found herself staring at readings that made no sense whatsoever. The gravitational sensors are still showing anomalous readings. Her assistant, Keth, reported through a series of color-shifting patterns across his translucent skin. Even though the human vessel returned to the system's edge 3 days ago, space-time in the demonstration area remains unstable. Silith's tendrils darkened to deep purple, indicating profound concern. Unstable how? Microdistortions. Tiny folds in space that appear and disappear at random intervals. It's as if reality itself remembers being manipulated and can't quite settle back into proper configuration. The implications were staggering. Weapons that left permanent scars on the fabric of space-time itself weren't weapons at all. They were tools for reshaping reality. Silith had studied ancient ruins for most of her career, and even the most advanced artifacts left by that vanished civilization hadn't shown evidence of such fundamental manipulation of universal constants. Have we received any response to our request for technical specifications from the human delegation? Keth's skin shifted to amused yellow patterns. Yes, but you won't like it. They sent a data packet containing complete blueprints for a children's toy and a note saying, "This is about as much as we can safely share without causing civilization-wide panic." Silith examined the blueprint with growing bewilderment. It was indeed a child's toy, some kind of simple gravity manipulation device that allowed human youngsters to play games involving floating objects and localized field distortions. The power requirements were minimal. The control systems were designed for developing motor skills, and the safety protocols were extensive. The disturbing part was that this children's toy operated on principles that the Altarian Science Consortium couldn't fully understand. If this is their idea of a safe educational device, Silith muttered, what does their actual military technology look like? Her question was interrupted by an emergency communication from the Galactic Council's Intelligence Division. The holographic image of Director Vashti, an ancient Quarian whose metallic carapace had turned silver with age, materialized above Silith's desk. Dr. Morvain, Director Vashti began without preamble. We need your team's analysis of the human demonstration. Several council species are demanding immediate investigation of potential treaty violations. What treaty violations? The humans demonstrated defensive and offensive capabilities as requested. They didn't actually harm anyone. The Corvan Empire claims that weapons capable of spatial manipulation violate the dimensional stability accords. They're arguing that humanity poses an existential threat to local spacetime. Silith's tendrils shifted to incredulous orange. The Corvan Empire has been using dimensional torpedoes for centuries. Their entire military doctrine revolves around punching holes between dimensions. Yes, but their weapons create small, temporary rifts. What the humans demonstrated was direct manipulation of space-time geometry without dimensional breaches. According to our physics department, it shouldn't be possible. Director, with respect, impossible is a relative term. The humans clearly possess an understanding of universal mechanics that exceeds our current knowledge. That doesn't make it illegal. Director Vashti's carapace darkened slightly. Dr. Morvain, there's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the Sol system. Multiple energy signatures consistent with the human battleship's power source. How many signatures? 47 distinct sources, all increasing in intensity over the past 6 months. The number hits Silith like a tidal wave. 47 vessels with capabilities similar to what they had witnessed? The galactic balance of power hadn't just shifted, it had been completely inverted without anyone noticing. Director, I need access to all sensor data from the Sol system. If humanity is building a fleet of such vessels, we need to understand their intentions. Granted, Dr. Morvain. I want your team to work with the Hegemony Science Division and the Vex Analytical Cores. Pool all resources and find out what humanity is really doing. Artyom. For Markley, as the communication ended, Silith found herself contemplating the true implications of the situation. 47 vessels represented more than a fleet. It was the foundation of an entirely new form of civilization. One based on technology that transcended conventional limitations. Her contemplation was interrupted by urgent alerts from the monitoring stations throughout the sector. Something was happening in the outer system regions, far beyond normal shipping lanes where few species ventured. Keth, what are those alerts? Her assistant's skin patterns cycled through confusion, alarm, and disbelief. Dr. Morvain. The long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures moving through interstellar space. Not ships using hyperspace or dimensional drives, but something traveling through normal space at impossible velocities. Impossible velocities? 30% light speed and accelerating. Whatever these objects are, they're violating several fundamental laws of physics. Silith's worst fears were beginning to crystallize. Track their trajectories. Where are they headed? The answer appeared on her tactical display as a series of glowing lines converging on a single point. The Terminus Nebula. A massive stellar formation at the edge of Council space. It was also the location of the galaxy's most sensitive early warning systems, designed to detect threats from the dark regions beyond known space. There's something else, Keth reported, his patterns now solid black with fear. The energy signatures match the readings from the human battleship's power source. Before Silith could respond, emergency broadcasts began flooding the communication networks. Every major species was receiving the same message simultaneously, transmitted on all frequencies with encryption keys that should have been impossible for any single species to possess. The message was from Captain Chen, the human representative who had so calmly presented their battleship to the Council just days earlier. Honored members of the Galactic Council. Chen's voice carried across space with crystal clarity. Humanity wishes to inform you that we have detected an imminent threat to galactic civilization. Our long-range monitoring systems have identified a massive hostile fleet approaching from extragalactic space. Estimated time of arrival: 6 standard days. Silith's tendrils went completely white. Extragalactic threats were theoretical nightmares, the kind of scenarios that kept military planners awake but were never expected to actually materialize. The approaching fleet consists of approximately 12,000 vessels, each measuring between 5 and 15 kilometers in length. Their technology appears to be several millennia in advance of current galactic standards, and their approach vector suggests hostile intent toward all inhabited systems. 12,000 ships, each one larger than the most massive vessels in the Council fleets. Syleth's analytical mind tried to process the implications and failed. Humanity's monitoring network has been tracking this threat for the past 18 months. We have been preparing appropriate countermeasures. To that end, humanity formally requests permission to deploy our full defensive capabilities to protect galactic civilization. The communication paused, and when Chen's voice resumed, it carried undertones that made every listener unconsciously straighten. We understand that our recent demonstration raised questions about our technological capabilities. Those questions are about to be answered. What you witnessed 3 days ago was a single ship operating at minimal capacity to avoid causing alarm. What you are about to witness is humanity operating at full capacity to prevent extinction. Across the galaxy, every major military installation began scrambling their fleets. The hegemony recalled their scattered patrol groups. The Corvan Empire began powering up their dimensional weapons, and the Vex started calculating strategic withdrawal routes. It was too little, too late, and everyone knew it. 47 human vessels could not stop 12,000 advanced extragalactic warships. Could they? Dr. Silith Morvain was about to discover that humanity's definition of full capacity was as far beyond galactic understanding as their children's toys were beyond primitive fire-making. The first indication that something unprecedented was occurring came from the deep space monitoring stations. Instead of the 47 energy signatures that had been detected in the Sol system, sensors now showed hundreds of new contacts emerging from apparently empty space throughout the galaxy. Keth, how many human vessels are we detecting now? The count keeps changing. Every time our sensors adapt to their stealth technology, we detect more ships. Current estimate is over 300 distinct contacts, but I suspect we're only seeing a fraction of their actual numbers. 300? But intelligence said they only had 47 ships with those capabilities. Keth's patterns shifted to confused spirals. Dr. Morvain, I don't think we've been detecting their military vessels at all. The energy signatures we've been tracking appear to be construction facilities, mobile shipyards, manufacturing platforms, resource processors, an entire industrial infrastructure that can move through space at will. The realization struck Syleth with the force of a stellar collapse. Humanity hadn't just built a fleet of advanced warships, they had created a completely mobile civilization. An entire industrial base that could relocate anywhere in the galaxy while remaining completely invisible to conventional sensors. Show me the tactical display of the approaching extragalactic fleet. The holographic projection that materialized above her desk was the stuff of nightmares. 12,000 contacts arranged in perfect geometric formations, approaching the galaxy at a significant fraction of light speed. Each individual vessel was massive beyond anything in the Council fleets, and their energy output suggested weapons capable of sterilizing entire solar systems. Estimated time until they reached the outer defense perimeters? 5 days, 14 hours. Syleth studied the projection, her analytical mind automatically calculating the forces required to stop such an armada. Every ship in the Council fleets combined would be insufficient. The technological advantage possessed by the approaching fleet was simply too overwhelming. Dr. Morvain. Keth's voice carried urgent overtones. New contacts appearing throughout the galaxy. Human vessels are everywhere. The tactical display updated, showing thousands of new icons scattered across galactic space. Human ships were materializing near every major star system, every industrial center, every strategic position that would be relevant in a galactic-scale conflict. But they weren't taking aggressive positions. Instead, they were forming defensive perimeters around inhabited worlds, as if humanity was preparing to shield the entire galaxy rather than secure strategic advantages for themselves. Are they surrounding us or protecting us? Syleth wondered aloud. Her answer came through another galaxy-wide broadcast from Captain Chen. Honored Council members, the Human Expeditionary Defense Network is now in position. All civilian populations are advised to remain within their home systems until the current crisis has passed. Military vessels from all species are invited to coordinate with human fleet elements for mutual defense. Expeditionary Defense Network? Syleth queried her databases for any reference to such an organization and found nothing. Dr. Morvain, Keth interrupted. Incoming priority message from the council chambers. They're requesting immediate consultation from all senior xenologists and technology specialists. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major species stood or hovered or coiled in their designated areas, all staring at the massive holographic display showing the approaching extragalactic fleet. The chamber's usual atmosphere of careful diplomacy had been replaced by barely controlled panic. High Arbiter Velnash's crystalline form reflected the chamber's lighting and fractal patterns that suggested deep stress. Dr. Morvain, what is your assessment of humanity's claimed defensive capabilities? Silith activated her portable analysis unit, projecting her findings for all to see. Honored Arbiter, based on our observations of the UNS Defiance and subsequent sensor readings, humanity possesses technology that operates on principles we don't understand. Their vessels appear capable of manipulating space-time directly, rendering conventional weapons and defenses obsolete. Admiral Zektar stood, his massive frame tense with barely controlled agitation. Dr. Morvain, you're describing capabilities that approach those attributed to the ancients. Are you suggesting humanity has discovered ancient technology? No, Admiral. I'm suggesting humanity has developed something that produces similar results through entirely different methods. Their approach to physics appears to be fundamentally different from our own. Representative Kaltos of the Corvan Empire, a creature that resembled a mobile crystal formation, chimed in harmonious frequencies that translated as extreme skepticism. Even if these humans possess advanced technology, how can several hundred ships, regardless of their capabilities, stop 12,000 vessels that dwarf our largest battleships? Silith consulted her data streams before responding. Representative Kaltos, I believe we may be underestimating the scale of humanity's preparations. Our sensors are detecting approximately 4,000 human vessels now, and that number continues to increase as our detection methods improve. 4,000? The exclamation came from multiple species simultaneously. Furthermore, Silith continued, the energy readings from human ships suggest power generation capabilities that exceed anything in our databases. A single human vessel appears to have the energy output of our largest space stations. High Arbiter Velnash's patterns shifted to what Silith recognized as deep contemplation. Dr. Morvain, in your professional opinion, do you believe humanity can defend against this extragalactic threat? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every representative waited for her answer, knowing that the survival of galactic civilization might depend on the capabilities of a species they had dismissed as technological inferiors just days earlier. Honored Arbiter, Silith said carefully, I believe humanity can defend against threats we cannot even comprehend. What disturbs me is not whether they can protect us, but what they might expect in return. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If humanity successfully defended the galaxy against an overwhelming extragalactic invasion, they would become the dominant power in known space by default. Every species would owe their continued existence to human protection. The age of humanity had begun, whether anyone was ready for it or not. There's something else, Silith added, her tendrils darkening with unease. Our analysis suggests that humanity has been aware of this threat for considerably longer than 18 months. The technological developments we've observed, the industrial infrastructure, the strategic positioning, this represents years, possibly decades of preparation. You're suggesting they knew this invasion was coming? Admiral Zektar's mandibles clicked ominously. I'm suggesting they've been preparing for something of this magnitude for a very long time. Either they possessed predictive capabilities that allowed them to anticipate this threat. Or what, Doctor? Silith's tendrils went completely black. Or they've faced similar threats before and survived them. The possibility that humanity had previous experience defending against extinction-level galactic threats was more unsettling than any weapon they might possess. It suggested a history that no other species was aware of. Capabilities developed through necessity, rather than scientific curiosity. As the emergency session continued with increasingly frantic military planning, Dr. Silith Morvain found herself wondering not whether humanity could save galactic civilization, but whether galactic civilization was ready for the changes that salvation would bring. Outside the council chambers, beyond the range of conventional sensors, thousands of human vessels moved through space with purpose that transcended simple military deployment. They were implementing plans that had been decades in the making, executing strategies developed by minds that understood threats most species couldn't imagine. The extragalactic invasion was about to discover why humanity had earned the right to laugh at conventional military power. And the galaxy was about to learn why some species chose to remain silent about their true capabilities until silence was no longer an option. They laughed at humanity's battleship moments later. Their fleet was gone. The extragalactic invasion force emerged from the void between galaxies like a plague of mechanical locusts. 12,000 vessels, each one a monument to destructive capability, arranged themselves in formations that spoke of countless conquered civilizations. Their approach had been detected months earlier, but seeing them arrive in person sent waves of despair through every inhabited system in the galaxy. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of humanity's newest vessel, the UNS Prometheus, watching the tactical display with the calm attention of someone who had seen this scenario play out before. The Prometheus made the Defiance look like an escort craft. Its 20-kilometer length housed technologies that pushed the boundaries of what reality would permit. "Contact the flagship of the invasion fleet," she ordered. Her communications officer, Lieutenant Rodriguez, looked up with surprise. "Captain, are you certain? Standard protocol for unknown hostile forces is..." "Lieutenant, there's nothing standard about what we're dealing with. Open a channel." The response came faster than expected, suggesting the invaders had been monitoring galactic communications for some time. The image that appeared on the main viewer was disturbing in its alien beauty. A crystalline entity that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its form shifting between geometric patterns that hurt to observe directly. Primitive inhabitants of this spiral arm, the entity spoke through harmonics that bypassed the translation matrix entirely, communicating meaning directly into the minds of those who heard it. "You have developed beyond the parameters established for your species. This development represents a contamination that must be sterilized." Captain Chen stepped forward, her expression unchanged. "I am Captain Sarah Chen, of the United Nations Space Command. You are trespassing in sovereign galactic space. State your intentions and prepare to leave immediately." The entity's form shifted into what might have been amusement. "Your species was observed and catalogued during your primitive development phase. The probability of your achieving spaceflight was calculated at less than 12%. The probability of your developing beyond basic interplanetary capability was negligible. Probability calculations can be wrong. No. Probability calculations are precise. Your development beyond predicted parameters indicates external interference or evolutionary manipulation. Both violations require correction through sterilization." Chen nodded slowly, as if the entity's words confirmed something she had long suspected. "So you've done this before? Other species? Other galaxies?" 47 galaxies have been processed to remove contamination and restore proper evolutionary development. This galaxy represents Process 48. The casual mention of 47 destroyed galaxies sent ice through the veins of every council representative monitoring the communication. 47 entire galaxies, each containing billions of species, wiped from existence because they had developed beyond parameters. "Captain Chen," Admiral Zektar's voice cut across the emergency channel, "withdraw immediately. No single species can stand against forces that have destroyed 47 galaxies." Chen didn't acknowledge the communication. Instead, she continued addressing the crystalline entity. "What you're describing isn't evolution correction. It's genocide on a universal scale. Terminology is irrelevant. Process will commence in one standard time unit. Prepare for sterilization." The communication ended, leaving the tactical display showing 12,000 alien vessels beginning to spread throughout the galaxy's outer regions. Their movement patterns suggested they intended to systematically destroy every inhabited system, starting with the most advanced civilizations and working their way down to primitive worlds. "Captain," Rodriguez said quietly, "Admiral Zektar is requesting immediate conference." All Council military commanders want to coordinate defensive strategies. Chen shook her head. Lieutenant, patch me through to the Galactic Emergency Network. All frequencies, maximum power. Yes, Captain. When the channel opened, Captain Chen's voice reached every inhabited world in the galaxy simultaneously. This is Captain Sarah Chen, of the United Nations Space Command, addressing all sapient species within galactic space. The entity you just witnessed represents a force that has destroyed 47 galaxies to prevent species from developing beyond predetermined limits. She paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. Humanity has encountered similar entities before. We have developed appropriate countermeasures. To all civilian populations, remain within your home systems and maintain standard defensive postures. To all military commands, maintain current positions and await further instructions. Humanity will handle this situation. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Zektar's incredulous response. Captain Chen, you cannot seriously intend to engage 12,000 vessels with your current forces. Even with your advanced technology, the numerical disadvantage is overwhelming. Admiral, you're thinking about this situation in conventional terms. Numbers become irrelevant when you're operating with sufficient technological advantage. Sufficient technological advantage? Captain, those ships are larger than anything in our fleets combined. Chen's response carried undertones that made every listener unconsciously straighten. Admiral, size is not the determining factor in stellar combat. Neither is numerical superiority. The determining factor is understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. On the tactical display, the human fleet began to move. What had appeared to be 4,000 vessels suddenly revealed itself to be considerably more as ships materialized from what seemed to be empty space. The count climbed past 10,000, then 20,000, then continued rising until the display systems could no longer track individual contacts. Dr. Silith Morvain, monitoring from her laboratory, watched her sensors struggle to comprehend what they were detecting. Keth, how many human vessels are we reading now? The sensors have given up trying to count them. Current estimate is over 100,000 distinct contacts, but that number is meaningless. They're not operating in normal space-time. What do you mean? Look at the tactical display. The human ships are occupying the same coordinates as each other without interference. They're existing in parallel spatial dimensions, all focused on this reality. Silith stared at the readings with growing amazement. Humanity hadn't just built a fleet, they had constructed an army that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, able to concentrate unlimited numbers of vessels in any location by folding space-time itself around their formations. The extragalactic invaders seemed to recognize that something unprecedented was occurring. Their formations began to shift into more aggressive postures, weapon systems powering up with energy readings that could sterilize star systems. But they were not dealing with conventional opposition. Captain Chen's voice cut across all communication channels once again. Attention, invasion force. You have 60 seconds to begin withdrawal from galactic space. This is your only warning. The crystalline entity's response came as a wave of harmonics that bypassed communication systems entirely, projecting meaning directly into the minds of every sapient being in the galaxy. Primitive species do not issue ultimatums to galaxy processors. Commence sterilization protocol. The battle that followed redefined the meaning of warfare on a cosmic scale. The invaders struck first, unleashing weapons that tore holes in space-time itself. Their opening barrage contained enough destructive energy to crack planets, focused on the largest concentrations of human vessels. The weapons passed harmlessly through their targets, not blocked, not deflected, simply ignored. The human ships existed in a state where conventional attacks could not reach them, occupying space that was simultaneously present and absent from normal reality. Impossible, Admiral Zektar whispered from his bridge. Nothing can simply ignore weapons of that magnitude. Captain Chen's response came through calm, professional tones that somehow made her words more disturbing than shouting would have. Admiral, when you understand space-time as a tool rather than a constraint, conventional weapons become irrelevant. Watch what humanity has learned to do with sufficient motivation. The human counterattack began not with weapons, but with something far more fundamental. Reality itself began to change around the invasion fleet. Space started to fold, creating geometric impossibilities that trapped enemy vessels in paradoxical locations. Ships found themselves inside their own weapon ranges, targets, and firing platforms occupying the same coordinates in ways that violated every known law of physics. Gravitational anomalies cascading throughout the invasion fleet. Dr. Morvain reported to the emergency council session. The human vessels are somehow manipulating local space-time to create tactical advantages that shouldn't be possible. The invaders responded by attempting to retreat into hyperspace, only to discover that humanity had anticipated this tactic. The space around each enemy vessel had been altered so that dimensional transit was impossible. They were locked into normal space, forced to fight on humanity's terms. The enemy fleet is trapped, Admiral Zektar observed with growing amazement. How are the humans preventing dimensional transit across such a vast area? Captain Chen provided the answer through her continuing tactical commentary. When you understand that space-time is not a fixed framework but a malleable medium, you learn to reshape it according to strategic requirements. The invasion fleet is now operating within a localized universe where our laws apply instead of theirs. What happened next transcended warfare and approached the realm of cosmic artistry. The human fleet began to move in patterns that hurt to observe directly, their vessels tracing geometric configurations that caused space itself to respond. Reality bent and flowed around their formations like water around stones, creating currents of altered physics that swept through the invasion fleet. Enemy ships began to experience impossible phenomena. Some found their weapons firing backwards through time, destroying their own vessels before they could launch attacks. Others discovered that their defensive systems had been inverted, protecting their enemies while leaving themselves vulnerable. Still, others simply ceased to exist in any conventional sense, their matter and energy redistributed across dimensions in ways that defied description. This isn't warfare, Dr. Morvain whispered, watching phenomena that challenged her understanding of reality itself. This is applied cosmic engineering. The crystalline entity that had spoken so confidently about galactic sterilization found its flagship surrounded by human vessels that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Its attempt to communicate was answered by Captain Chen's voice, now carrying harmonics that suggested she was speaking from multiple realities at once. You mentioned processing 47 galaxies. That stops here. Impossible. Your species was classified as minimal threat potential. Your classification system has a fundamental flaw. You judge species by their current capabilities rather than their potential for growth under pressure. Humanity has faced extinction before, and survived by learning to use forces that other species consider impossible. The entity's form began to shift erratically as the space around its vessel became increasingly unstable. What forces? What techniques? These capabilities require millions of years of development. Chen's response carried undertones of ancient pain and hard-won knowledge. They require motivation. When your species faces extinction repeatedly, you learn to push beyond conventional limitations. Humanity has been preparing for this confrontation for longer than your species has existed. The revelation hit the galactic intelligence community like a supernova. Humanity hadn't developed their technologies in response to this invasion. They had been preparing for something like this for millennia, possibly longer. Their entire civilization had been shaped by the knowledge that forces existed in the universe that would demand impossible capabilities for survival. The end of the battle came not with explosions or dramatic destruction, but with simple cessation. The invasion fleet stopped existing in normal space-time. Their matter and energy redistributed across dimensions, in patterns too complex for conventional sensors to follow. 12,000 vessels that had destroyed 47 galaxies were gone, leaving behind only fading gravitational ripples and the profound silence of empty space. Status report, Captain Chen requested calmly. All invasion forces neutralized, her tactical officer responded. No damage to galactic infrastructure or council vessels. Dimensional barriers restored to normal parameters. And our fleet status? All vessels report ready for continued operations. Estimated time to return to standard patrol patterns. 6 hours. Captain Chen nodded and opened a channel to the Galactic Emergency Network. This is Captain Chen. The extragalactic threat has been neutralized. All species may resume normal operations. Humanity looks forward to continued cooperation with the Galactic Council. The communication ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate its new reality. Admiral Zektar sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed only empty space where 12,000 impossible vessels had been moments before. His fleet, which had been preparing for a desperate last stand, hadn't fired a single shot. "Admiral," his communications officer said quietly. "Incoming message from High Command." "Not now, sir." "It's Supreme Admiral Thekvar. He says it's urgent." Zektar accepted the communication, expecting orders to investigate what had just occurred. Instead, he found himself facing his superior's scarred features arranged in an expression he had never seen before, profound respect tinged with unease. "Admiral Zektar, you have witnessed something that changes everything we thought we knew about galactic power structures." "Yes, sir. The humans, their capabilities, are beyond anything we imagined possible." "Admiral, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. That demonstration was not humanity operating at full capacity. According to our deep space monitors, they only deployed approximately 1% of their actual fleet." The number hit Zektar like a collision with an asteroid. 1%. The force that had casually eliminated 12,000 galaxy-killing vessels represented 1% of humanity's military capability. "What are our orders, sir?" "Full alliance cooperation with humanity. Immediate technology sharing agreements. And Admiral, under no circumstances are we ever to take any action that could be interpreted as hostile toward human interests. We are no longer dealing with a minor species seeking protection." "What are we dealing with, sir?" Supreme Admiral Thekvar's expression grew distant. "We are dealing with the species that the universe chose to be its immune system." As Zektar's fleet began the journey back to base, he found himself contemplating the true implications of what he had witnessed. Humanity hadn't just defended the galaxy against invasion, they had revealed themselves to be something beyond conventional understanding. The laughter that had greeted humanity's modest battleship just days earlier seemed like an artifact from a different universe. No one would be laughing at human military capabilities ever again. Instead, the galaxy would be asking a far more disturbing question. What other threats existed in the dark spaces between galaxies that had required humanity to develop such overwhelming defensive capabilities? And what would humanity expect in return for protecting species that had dismissed them as primitive just days earlier? The age of humanity had begun not with conquest, but with protection. The galaxy would soon discover whether that made them benevolent guardians, or something far more complicated. Dr. Silith Morvain, reviewing the sensor readings in her laboratory, made a notation that would eventually become the foundation of a new field of study. Recommendation: establish immediate research protocols for understanding technologies that operate beyond conventional physical laws. Priority: understand what humanity has been preparing to fight for the past 1,000 years. Previous threat assessment classifications for humanity, permanently suspended. New classification: Galactic Protectorate status. Pending further evaluation of actual capabilities. Personal note: remember that when a species calls something a children's toy, it may still be beyond our ability to comprehend. The galaxy was safe, but safety had come at the cost of every assumption about the nature of power, technology, and the limits of what was possible. Humanity had laughed last, and their laughter would echo through the cosmos for generations to come.